Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute rant. Sorry, 10-minute moan. And the topic of this one is Nicola Sturgeon's appearance at the UK COVID inquiry today. Now, what I intend to do, they have done the first of the morning session from 10 up until 11 o'clock. And what I intend to do is in this video, we'll talk about what she'd done and what she spoke about in that session. And I hope to do a session on each of her evidence given episodes today. So I would imagine we will have maybe 3 or 4. I'll identify this one as part 1 on the thumbnail, just so those who want to watch them all don't have to waste time trying to figure out what's what. However, Nicola took to stand. What I would say is, from an optics point of view, she turned up in a car today which somebody on Twitter had highlighted did no MOT, which caused a bit of a laugh on Twitter for those who despise the woman, and the obvious defence of it by those who adore the woman. But it was quite a bizarre start of the day when she turned up 2 hours early for her evidence. When she took to the stand, she'd made her oath, and she looked particularly sheepish for someone who can normally stand in public with confidence. She looked surprisingly sheepish, and at some points in the first hour of her interrogation, she did get to that point where she was able to be comfortable, confident, and then she would be asked an awkward question by the KC and would fold back into a sort of predicted rabbit. At one point, I actually thought she was going to start crying. Now, one of the biggest key questions she had this morning was about Ken Thompson. That was the Director General, who was in the WhatsApp group telling folk to delete their WhatsApps because they could be subject to an FOI request, and also described himself as having plausible deniability as his middle name. Remember that guy? It was last week. She was asked about that, and we'll look at a clip of that first of all before we go on to the other topics. So here we are, the KC, very competent man, asking her and producing the evidence of a WhatsApp conversation where Ken Thompson, the Director General of the Civil Service, is giving out some strange advice.
This is another exchange. This is not a group that features you, but it's another piece of evidence that we've seen. And I'd be interested in understanding your reflection on some of the content of the exchange. This is in your capacity as the former First Minister and First Minister at the time. This is in a WhatsApp group chat called COVID Outbreak Group. These messages were provided to the inquiry by Dr. Jim McMenamin of Public Health Scotland, who did not delete his messages, and not by the Scottish Government or its officials. In the exchange at 27th of August 2020, you'll recognise, no doubt, the individuals involved. Ken Thompson says, "Just to remind you seriously, this is discoverable under FOI. Know where the clear chat button is," to which Nicola Sturgeon replies, "Yes, absolutely." Jason Leach points out DG level input there. Mr. Thompson says, "Plausible deniability are my middle names. Now clear it again." Jason Leach says, "Done." Nicola Sturgeon, "Me too," and someone called Donna Bell and me. Were you aware in your capacity as First Minister that these sort of exchanges took place and that a senior member of the civil service considered plausible deniability to be his middle name?
As you said at the outset of the question, I was not a member of this group until some of these exchanges were explored in evidence sessions last week. I had never seen these messages before. Did I know that there would be WhatsApp groups where officials were exchanging information? I'm not sure I was particularly conscious of it, but I would have, had I been asked to stop and consider that, I would have said, well, I would assume so, given the nature of how people we're working. I would absolutely expect all officials in the Scottish Government to retain, in line with Scottish Government policies, information relevant to our decision making. I look at that exchange, and what I don't see is an exchange about the decisions we're taking. I see a light-hearted discussion between officials. Ken Thompson, I know, has been before you and has given his interpretation of that, so he can answer and has answered for himself. I would read that as him reminding people of the need to be professional on WhatsApp, even when discussing light-hearted things. The other thing I would say about all of these individuals on the screen before me is that they are all, in my knowledge and experience, and with some of them, particularly Ken Thompson, this is extensive experience. They are public servants of the utmost integrity.
So, there we have it. Miss Sturgeon, when she's faced with the evidence of a Director General of the Civil Service giving advice to delete WhatsApps because you might become, a topic of a FOI request, and describing himself as having the middle names of plausible deniability. Miss Sturgeon tells us he is a public servant of utmost integrity. Now, forgive me, Miss Sturgeon, but my opinion as a mere mortal of someone with integrity is not someone who tells people to delete stuff because they might become subject of a FOI request. That is far from showing utmost integrity. It is the complete opposite of showing utmost integrity. And someone who boasts about how clever they are and their middle names are plausible deniability is not someone who has my utmost respect, or I would describe as having utmost integrity. However, it gives us a great insight into your morals when you believe this sort of behaviour by someone who's a Director General of a civil service is absolutely shocking. Other things that we covered in today's first part of her interrogation was she was asked about when Channel 4 quite clearly asked her during the height of COVID that, there was evidently going to be inquiries. Would she provide, and not delete, specifically not delete, and then gave a list of things like emails, etc., and quite specifically said, included WhatsApps, where she publicly stated that she would not delete any of this stuff. That goes in complete opposite to two things she relied on in the future, where she actually did delete, but however, told us that was her just following policy. If I was a First Minister and someone asked me, would you delete WhatsApp messages, quite clearly and significantly, and I knew that I had to delete them, I would have explained when answering that question that no, that was impossible. However, I would take the salient points and use the buzzword to save any important points in WhatsApp before I was legally bound to delete them. She failed to mention that to the man. She told that man from Channel 4 and the Scottish public at large, I will not delete them. This leads me to believe that this policy excuse that came up in the future was just total bunkum. Because during that, if she was well aware of that, and that was one of her overriding passions because she tells everybody how she just wants to follow this policy that nobody knows about, she would have highlighted it when asked the direct question, will you delete your WhatsApps? The right answer would have been no, because I can't, because of this policy. That suggests to me the policy is bunkum. There was another instance where she was asked about a message from Leach, and that was on WhatsApp from memory, and how that was provided to inquiry, not by her, and how it was talking about a policy decision, and that information didn't make it on to the central database. There was an instance of messages to a Miss Lloyd quite clearly showing decision-making processes were happening through not normal channels, as she describes them, and I believe it was in WhatsApp. And this conversation was quite lengthy and quite detailed, something that you or I would probably see as decision-making. This, again, was not given by, as evidence by Miss Sturgeon, and didn't make its way onto any of her centralised databases that it should have done after the event, if Miss Sturgeon was of her word. So there we go. First session in, as expected, a lot of bunkum, lot of wind. However, this KC, I believe, is a very intelligent man, and he seems to line up his questions to bring the answers back in at a later date, and I believe he's doing that with Nicola. And I believe that as we go through the day, some of the stuff that he's already closed the door on will come back to haunt her. He looks far more comfortable so far. If you enjoyed this one, thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe. There'll be some recommendations in the corner, but most important of all, have a great day. Bye now.